Hey everyone, welcome back. This is our last follow-up on Voruna's kit focusing on her 1. Luckily, it isn't as convoluted as all of the weird things going on with her 2, but you can still do some pretty interesting things with this ability. We'll also have a somewhat more normal setup for her 1 that you can take anywhere as well. After this, I'll start working on my backlog, which includes videos I've had footage for well over a month already. Anyways, let's get started. How exactly does Voruna's 1 work? It makes you invisible on cast and gives you a movement speed buff. No other effects of her 1 apply. Leaving invisibility removes this speed buff, but then you get the remaining buffs from her 1. This includes a flat crit damage buff, not multiplicative, additive. You also get plus 100% flat status chance, meaning guaranteed status procs, and force proc slash. Except this only applies to melee. No guns benefit from any of these damage ramping buffs at all. There's also the weird situation where ranged melees do not get the force proc slash. So what does this mean? It means Glaive's AoE do not get the bonus slash proc. More specifically, non-Glaive Prime builds cannot proc slash off of their AoE using Dynar. The Archoplasma projectile from Agendis will not proc slash from Dynar either. The Grigori Glaive projectile also does not force proc slash. Contagion also doesn't, but Contagion is also one of our highlights today. Hitting anything with your melee while invisible grants you a 3-second buff with all of these effects. It's always 3 seconds no matter how much duration you have. Killing an enemy with a melee though, including with dots, will extend the buff to the remaining listed duration, which is affected by the duration stat on your Warframe. Every 100% duration grants an extra 5 seconds to the extension. Now, Exodia Contagion is a Zaw only special arcane that goes in the Zaw arcane slot. You double jump in melee or bullet jump in melee and a projectile comes out. The rank of the arcane isn't too important for general play as it only affects the passive that takes effect if you're beyond 30 meters away from the target. Contagion has its own stats, but it inherits some stats from your Zaw too. It uses the base damage total of your Zaw. It also uses the status chance and crits from your Zaw. However, the IPS split is different. It is naturally 33.3% of each type impact, puncture, and slash. Remember how I said in my original Voruna video that her 1 benefits the most from weapons that have monster crit stats and cannot slash effectively normally. Well, Contagion doesn't get the force proc slash, but since the direct hit does in fact gain the plus 100% flat status, and the projectile is naturally 33% slash, this means you can build a full crit high base damage Zaw, and then source your status chance from Voruna to create a slash proc monster Contagion. We do have to fix the slash weight though, which can be done with Buzzkill, among other mods. This is a Miwan Sikala Varjit 2 Jai Zaw. I built it as a polearm because it has a faster swing animation this way. If you want to maximize the damage, instead of comfiness on spamming Contagions, you could go the Dokram route. Because Contagion only has IPS on the direct hit and not the AoE or the dots the hits create, you can only slash proc enemies with the direct hit. This means it's really only practical for killing acolytes, or more logically, Demolysts. They obviously have their own damage attenuation calcs, but how hard does it hit? How about 150k plus bleed dots per throw on a Polearm Tsar, which is clearly nowhere near being the highest base damage option? This was also before I fully optimized the build. I would actually expect it to be around 200k plus now, and with how quickly you can throw the Contagion, that 200k on a Demolyst adds up very quickly. Is this practical for endurance? Not really, but with that 90% damage reduction on them, it is pretty funny for the first 20 rounds of Steel Path Disruption. It can go to 9k, but starts to get very convoluted to run, and I wouldn't recommend it. For this Zaw, we went full crit with no elementals whatsoever. This is because Contagion does not get the force proc slash, so slash weight matters. I've slotted Buzzkill, which increases the slash weight of Contagion to 52.4%. Higher would be better, but slotting another slash mod is actually worse than all the other alternative mods we could use, so we settle for 52.4. The direct hit of Contagion does actually benefit from Condition Overload, which makes it monstrously more powerful. It doesn't affect the AoE or the dawn of the projectile itself, just the hit and resulting direct hit procs. Honestly, if Condition Overload didn't work on this, then I wouldn't even show you the build. But hey, a 2.5 million slash dot from a single throw against trash fodder is pretty promising, isn't it? We double slot crits with Sack Steel and Blood Rush because there honestly isn't much else to bring. Prime Fury let us swing and set up faster, and crit damage plus primed Smite to double dip on the bleeds. Gladiator Might is both here to push crit damage higher and guarantee we actually pass 300% crit chance for all reds. We don't use Weeping because it's base 10% status, and we're already getting plus 100% flat from Voruna. Now for herself, this is the build I would run with the Contagion setup. It's actually a tweaked version of my Disruption Voruna with normal melee, which I'll show you later. But this Voruna can also accomplish a lot of other interesting things. The only reason why this Gladiator mod is here because we need at least a 2-set bonus for Contagion to reach 300% CC without a Ribbon. If you don't care about the rare orange, then feel free to replace this mod with whatever you want. Every single ability on this build will restore all of your shields instantly for shield gating and for using a Decay Dragon key. This is because we're running Brief Respite and 2 Augur mods for 230% energy to shield conversion. The other Augur mod comes from your pistol. The cheapest ability on her kit is her 1 at 38.75 cost, and it restores 89 shields on cast, which is more than her 75 cap. The rest of the build is pretty cookie cutter, all duration, all strength. Rolling Guard is there in a pinch to get rid of X my status effects, because going invisible should already de-aggro you quite well. Vigilante Pursuit to see spawns and the Demolyst easier in advance on the map, and Equilibrium to fuel your 45 efficiency needs since a lot of her kills will be with melee, which drop health orbs, Arcane Fury and Strike to buff Contagion further. So how does this play? You just kill an enemy with your melee spam when the Demolyst starts getting closer. With your 1 active, it gives you 3 seconds when you use an action to kill them, and because the normal swings of your Zaws do get Force Proc Slash, a monster crit damage buff, and it's a pure crit stick to start with, it should be super easy to kill an enemy off. Congrats! On this build, now we have a 16-second super buff from your 1 to set up and abuse on the Demolyst. You basically just prime them with whatever weapon you want. I usually use an Epitaph for ease of use because of the cold procs to slow them down. But then you start chucking Contagions at their heads, optionally with Magus Lockdown to hold them in place. Literally, that's all you do, until they die. The Contagion has 100% or higher status on this build to Voruna's 1, and 52.4% slash weight, meaning you will proc slash about once every 2 throws, but every time it procs, that's another 200k slash tick added to the total. Is it convoluted? Slightly. Is it funny though? Absolutely. You know what could work better? Just bringing Thero Strike and directly hitting the Demolyst with a pure viral Contagion. So why did I even show you this? Because you can do some pretty interesting things with Glaives on Voruna with a similar premise. You can use the same Voruna build if you're willing to build the Glaives up to 90% heavy efficiency, otherwise you can drop the Gladiator mod, but Glaive Prime Force Procs Slash. Voruna's 1 gives it a massive crit damage buff. While it doesn't give it the extra Force Proc Slash in the AoE, it does give it plus 100% flat status. So if you mod the Glaive Prime for Viral, you now have a self-priming Glaive that almost always inflicts Viral on the AoE every time it explodes on top of the Force Proc Slash. Yes, you could use Nourish to get Viral this way and not have to bother changing the modding, but remember how Glaives double dip weapon damage buffs? So if you don't take Nourish, you can take Roar instead to double dip bleeds more, and then pile on Arcane Arachne for general weapon based damage to double dip too. And you know what happens when a Glaive Prime Voruna encounters an Acolyte? Or a Steel Path Demolyst? They instantly get deleted. That's it. Self-priming explosive Glaive with absurd scaling. This is the Glaive Prime build. What did we drop? We removed Killing Blow and the Primed Smite. Why? Because we're running such a high strength Roar Voruna that it significantly overpowers the Primed Smite. Primed Smites are super duper strong, but at the same time Voruna buffs Glaive so hard to the point that you don't even need the Bane anymore, since we also have Roar and you can now just use a generalist all-faction setup. Of course, Pure Toxin works better against Corpus, so what happens if you want to use Cerata? Cerata is an 8 Toxin, so unlike Glaive Prime, we only need 1 elemental mod to make viral, and that means we can keep the Prime Smite mod or Killing Blow up to you. Cerata has significantly higher base damage than Glaive Prime. This thing is lethal to Corpus and even more so in Voruna's hands. Not only does the Cerata always force proc Toxin, but Voruna's 1 now grants it plus 100% flat status, which means the explosion will proc with a cold mod both viral and Toxin, and you can still bring Roar 2 if you want. And remember, you can hide invisible so you don't get killed even though there is no crowd control on her kit. But what if you just want to use a normal Voruna setup? Well, I also got that for you as well. This was the Voruna I brought to level 9k Steel Path Disruption with Roadblock the other day. He's a super cool Warframe streamer. Please go check him out, I've also linked him down in the description. This is the normal melee level 9k Voruna that revolves around using her wand to buff the shit out of your melee and destroy everything. Like I said earlier, the best melees for Voruna are those that have good hitboxes but previously lacked ways to status well and couldn't produce slash procs. I've chosen Fragor for this purpose because it is the literal definition of crit stick that can't slash. Other similar options include Tenet Exec, Arcatitron, etc. I had a few of you guys asking for a better explanation and showcase of these melees, so here they are today. The Fragor I'm using reaches 300% crit chance for pure reds during the run. This is in part to the crazy base 40% crit chance, Gladiator mods, Voruna being able to easily use Combat Discipline, alongside Arcane Avenger for a bonus flat 45% crit, and she easily heals off all of the self-damage because of her 3. So how does it actually work? This is our Fragor melee. It has no faction bonuses because we don't need it to kill trash fodder. The bleeds are already so big that nothing survives, even at 9k. So we get to mod pure viral damage, which will easily proc even without weeping wounds because of Voruna's plus 100% flat status buff, and still get force proc slash when this weapon is naturally only 15% slash weight, before piling on all of that viral. We get to double slot attack speed via Gladiator Vice and Berserker Fury alongside Arcade Strike, Condition Overload because we bring primers, and you also have Voruna's too. Reach for Giga Chad range as everything bleeds out anyways and you don't get swarmed in Disruption, and Organ Shatter for crit damage. We don't bring Gladiator Might because of diminishing returns since Voruna's 1 already brings a monster amount of crit damage anyways. I also brought a primer Epitaph too, so I can slow enemies with cold, but it also primes them with Radiation, Viral, and Blast, and direct hits also give IPS for up to 7 status effects. Radiation makes enemies shoot each other instead of me. Viral buffs mine damage, the rest are just for condition overload. Her 2 does give us a bunch of extra status procs, but Epitaph lets me stay out of range from the Demolyst Nullifier Pulse, as well as guaranteeing I proc cold to slow it down. Feel free to cast your 2 on the demo if you want when you're in melee range, but basically you should always be on her 2 passive for status immunity. The only time you switch is after you prime and cast Thero Strike because I modded some range so you can hit them from outside of the Nullifier Pulse, and then you get in their face with a heavy attack at 12x combo, whether it's an Acolyte, Pesky Axemis, or Demolyst. A direct hit from a 12x Fragor with her 1 buff active easily does several million damage to a Demolyst, or hundreds of thousands to an Acolyte, which is more than enough to one-shot them, and it only drops you to 10x combo. So if they somehow survive this swing, you just swing again. This is how you make the most of her 1, whether it's for weird ranged melee or beefing up crit sticks that can't slash. Normal trash mobs don't need Thero Strike. The ridiculous bleeds from the super high base damage of your Fragor will kill them instantly, even if the raw damage itself is completely nullified by the armor scaling in 9k. And you know what the best part of this is? You don't even need to use a Fragor, or a Glaive, or Exec, or Titron. Literally any melee you want will be able to trash Demolyst with the 12x heavy swing spam because of how her 1 works. Sure, it might take more swings, but most weapons also swing faster than a Fragor heavy attack. Be it Glaives, pure electric Agendas getting force proc electric due to Voruna's 1 on the projectile, Contagion slash proc memes, or just absurd hammer DPS, Voruna's 1 is actually a very strong ability worth building for. Cheers! If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like the Lewis Prey update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching and see you all next time.